All right, guys, class 8, and we're gonna get into it. This stuff is gonna be super simple, super easy to understand. I just want you guys to grab the concepts. Okay, so here we go. Financial systems. What is a financial system? So, financial system refers to a system which enables a transfer of money between investors and borrowers. So, basically, any place like a bank or something where, or a trading platform or something like that, where money can be given from an investor to a borrower, basically. So, someone who's putting their money in, and someone who's borrowing the money. Banks, that's basically how banks run. The reason why how the business of a bank is they create a place for people to put their money, so they don't have to store all this cash and all that stuff, so they stored the cash for you. The way they make their money is they take your cash and they lend it out to someone else, and that person pays interest on that. So that's how they make money. They make money off the interest. um, So that's basically how banks work. So a financial system could be defined at an international, regional, or organizational level. The term system and financial system indicates a group of complex and closely linked institutions, agents, procedures, markets, transactions, claims, and liabilities within an economy. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. All right, so five basic components of financial systems. Got central banks, financial markets, financial instruments, financial services, and money. So central bank basically is the large financial institution that handles government finances, right? So central bank is the one that handles the entire government spending, expenses, and all their money, right? So they're the ones that provide and lend money to the government to go do this and that. They regulate the supply of money, and they serve as banks to commercial banks. So the banks that you guys bank with, they get their lending from the central banks. Central banks are the big dogs in the game. Financial markets basically are a place where financial assets are created or transferred. It can be broadly categorized into money markets and capital markets. So financial markets basically is anything like a stock market, where you can go and you can um, purchase financial instruments. So a financial instrument is something like an asset, security, equity, bonds, right? Those are all examples of stuff that you can purchase. So financial instruments you can purchase in financial markets. So if you go to stock market, you can buy mutual funds, you can buy stocks, individual stock share prices, you could buy you can do a bunch of stuff there, right? Bonds, all that stuff. Financial services are more like banks, right? So they lease from leasing companies, mutual fund houses, merchant bankers, portfolio managers, bill discounting, and acceptance houses, right? So a bunch of so basically they're consists of services provided by asset management and liability management companies. They help to get the necessary funds and also make sure that they're efficiently deployed. So, for example, my company that I work with right now, we manufacture heavy equipment. We don't have our own leasing, so we don't have our own leasing department. So what we do is we use a third-party leasing company. So what that leasing company does is when we go install the equipment, so basically what I do is I bring those leasing guys in. If one of our clients wants to lease something, I get those two guys, I get my clients and my third-party leasing company connected. They do all the paperwork. They get the paperwork done. They sign it off. And what happens is I go and I install the equipment. Once I install the equipment, my leasing company pays me all cash, like immediately pays me the cash. They get the lease and they make their money off of the interest off the lease. So they love that. They love paying us ASAP, and then them getting making money off interest. Money is understood to be anything that is accepted for payment of products and services or for the repayment of debt. It is a medium of exchange and acts as store of value. We all know what money is. Okay, so those are the five basic financial components. So what are some methods of payment in an international contract? Let's just say that you're sending stuff overseas. You're selling stuff overseas. What are some what are some methods of payment that you can accept? Cash in advance, letters of credit, documentary collection, open account. So I can tell you a lot about documentary collection because that's what I used to do when I used to do international trade. When I was selling oil ships, so we'd have these massive oil ships, these oil rigs that would come to our plant, and we would fill them up with like 25 million pounds of oil, sometimes 30, sometimes 50 million pounds. and they would take those ships across to like Egypt, Morocco, Texas, all these different countries, Africa, all these different countries. So what we did, the way that we collected our money was, so I had to sell the ship, I had to sell the oil, and then I had to collect all the necessary documentation. It all works off original documents. So the way that it works is with documentary collection is I have to go to the surveyors, make sure the surveyors are they survey the oil to make sure that the oil is it meets spec. So I have to get those original documents from them. I have to get the our storage facility has to tell us exactly how much was sent in the how much was loaded onto the ship, which are original documents. I have to get that. We had to get what else? Bill of ladings. Those are all original port documentation that we needed to get. What else was there? There was SGS, there was that, there was this. Yeah, so that's basically it. So those three documentations they have to get ready, right? So they make all those ready and then they give us the originals. So when we have the originals, the ship has already left. It's already sailing to get to the client. Now the client can't offload that ship unless they get this documentation sent to them. So we would say, okay, documents are ready, send us the money. As soon as the money gets sent to us, we ship over. Like we would send them the copies of all the documents so they could check it to make sure it's all good, all that stuff. Okay, perfect. They wire us over the money. As soon as I get the money, I courier the documents over to them in Egypt or wherever the hell they are, and then they would take it there and they'd be good to go. They show it to the port. The port would take it, look at it. Okay, good, good, good. Offload. So that's basically how that documentary collection. That's how we used to do it. But you rarely ever see cash in advance or prepayment. So this is basically you're paying for the goods before you receive them. You don't really see that in international trade. Letters of credit are very, very common. So basically what happens is in order to see if a company overseas, because you don't have a lot of knowledge about a company overseas. Let's say a company in Africa calls you and says, hey, can you manufacture this equipment for me? Sure, I can do it, but how do I know once I manufacture it, you'll be able to pay me? So we need to see proof of funds. Letters of credit show the proof of funds. Why? Because what you have to do is they you go to a bank and the you give let's say you give the guy in Africa a quote for $100,000 to have this equipment delivered to him. He will go put that $100,000 in a bank. The bank will then say, what are the terms? The terms are that I have to get this equipment at this place, at this port, delivered, and it has to be working condition, all that stuff, and then release the payment. Fine. So the bank holds on to his $100,000 and holds on to the agreement, and then what you do as a client, as a manufacturer, is you can see that the $100,000 is there, the money is available. Okay, you start manufacturing. You start manufacturing, blah blah blah. You send it over. The client likes it. Client says, okay, approved. You get your money. So that's basically how letter of credits work. And then open accounts, arrangement between a business and a customer where the customer can buy goods and services on a deferred payment basis. This really works with companies who are local, right? Like you could do local credit checks, you could do all that stuff. So if you're living in Canada, what we do is we give terms to our clients, our construction or general contractors, because we know they're right, they're here, they're in the vicinity of us, so we can, if we need to sue them, we could sue them. If we need to get our money, we can get our money, get our equipment. It's not an issue. But if you're dealing with someone in Africa that you've never dealt with before, chances are you're not going to give them terms. You're not going to let them say, you're not going to give them their product and say, hey, pay me in 30 days, pay me in 40 days. Because what happens when you can't get your, let's say they take the thing and say, oh yeah, sorry, we go bankrupt. What can you do? What can you really do? There's not really much you can do. I mean, you could try to sue, you could try to do this, try to do that, but the legal fees and everything itself are going to be way more expensive than, what if you won't even be able to get your equipment? What if that company just dissolves and they can't find the owners anymore and they just leave, you know what I mean? There's so many different things that can happen. So when you're doing business internationally, there's always a risk of foreign exchange, right? So, for example, if I'm selling product into the U.S. and right now, let's say today the U.S. and Canadian dollars at the same at the same rate, okay? So, um, actually, you know what? Let's say I'm buying something from the U.S. Okay, I'm buying something from the U.S. and let's say today the Canadian exchange rate and the U.S. exchange rate is the same, and I'm purchasing this for a future date. So let's just say I'm purchasing it for $1,000 US and I'm gonna be picking it up 6 months from now. Let's say in 6 months from now the US dollar becomes the Canadian dollar weakens and the US dollar gets stronger and now I'm paying 1.4, it's 1.4 to 1. So 1.4 Canadian dollars is 1,000 US dollars. In this situation, that's a huge risk to me. That's I'm going to be taking a financial loss, right? Because now if the stuff was worth $100,000 and I was going to pay $100,000, now I have to pay $140,000 to get that same equipment because a foreign exchange is switched, right? Things changed. The US dollar got stronger, Canadian dollar got weaker. Now I'm not able to purchase. I'm $40,000 in a loss. So foreign exchange risk refers to the losses that an international financial transaction may incur due to currency fluctuations. Foreign exchange risk can also affect investors who trade in international markets and businesses engaged in the import-export of product or services to multiple countries. Three types of foreign exchange risks are transaction, translation, and economic risk. Let's see what those are. Transaction risk. This is the risk that a company faces when it's buying a product from a company located in another country. The price of the product will be denominated in the selling company's currency. If the selling company's currency were to appreciate, like I just said, versus the buying company's currency, then the company doing the buying will have to make a larger payment in its base currency to meet the contracted price. Exactly what I just talked about. If you're buying from US, they're giving you a US dollar amount, and you have to try and you have to pay that. And if they get stronger, you get weaker, you're paying more. Translation risk. A parent company owning a subsidiary in another country could face losses when the subsidiary's financial statements, which will be denominated in that country's currency, must be translated back to the parent company's currency. So let's just say you own a company in, let's say you own a, a company that has locations in like I said, manufacturing, right? You have a manufacturing plant in the U.S., a manufacturing plant in Canada, you have one in Europe, and you have one in Africa. Now, or let's say you have one in the Middle East as well. Now, because of the war in the Middle East, the currency of the Middle East is dropping heavily because there's so much war going on and they're losing a lot of value of their country, so their currency is going down. How that will negatively affect the parent company. Let's say our parent company is in the U.S., right? That's negatively going to affect that because you're investing dollars in there, and those dollars when converted turn so less because there's no value in the money anymore. Let's say you invested $100,000 into that plant, and now and that plant was outputting 100,000. Let's say that I was outputting $1 million a year. Let's say $1 million a year that plant was producing. Now $1 million a year is fine when you invested, but a few years later, now that the currency of that market is completely diminished, so now that $1 million, which was getting you, let's just say if you convert, let's just say that when you convert it, the million, let's just say it was like the company in Middle East was making 20 million reals, let's just say, and that converted to a million US today. So you're like, oh, you know what, we're making $1 million US, that's great. Now the when the war happens and the Middle East country's currency drops and it gets so much weaker, that $1 million that you were getting is now maybe $200,000, $100,000 because the value of the currency fell. So that's translation risk. So, and then lastly is economic risk. So also called forecast risk, refers to when a company's market value is continuously impacted by an unavoidable exposure to currency fluctuations. So the economy is very it fluctuates, right? Like it's unstable and it's hard to predict. It's unpredictable. So what happens in this situation is companies that are doing business overseas and stuff, they are always in threat. They're always threatened by economic risk. They're always threatened by what could happen in the economy that could lower our chances of making money. So, for example, the market value of a company could be it could change, right? Because let's just say that you're a U.S. company, like we said before, and you're doing business in overseas, and you're making a lot of money overseas, and you're converting that back and sending it to yourself, giving it in your U.S. dollar to your own company here. What happens when the dollar, the currency there goes down? You're going to be making less money, right? So that's basically economic risk. So it's the economy that can take a toll. All right, guys, that's basically it. This is the end of slides. Hope you guys think this was easy because it was not difficult at all. And we are going to talk about this in the live chat. All right, see you guys.